Mr. President, welcome to the Daily Show.
Well, welcome back to the White House.
Thank you. It's very nice to be back. I was trying to figure out when the last time you and I had a conversation was, and I realized it was November 2016 at a very diverse Diwali party that you hosted just a few weeks after Trump became the president-elect. And I remember that you described that night as an Irish Catholic vice president and a Muslim Gold Star family celebrating a reception observing a Hindu holiday.
It's America.
Well, exactly. That's how I felt. I mean, I remember just feeling so positive and so much hope there. And then...
That's Mr. Khan, right?
That was Mr. Khan, yes, exactly. Then I remember just 4 years of policy and vitriol under Trump, and now things feel more divided. So I was curious how you feel that we can stay hopeful, and how can we get the country to unify?
The truth of the matter is I've never been more optimistic in my entire life about politics. No, I mean it now. I tell you what, look, if you think about it, the reason I give my words to Biden, I hadn't planned on running again. I had lost my son, Beau. It was a tough time, and I wasn't going to run at all, for real. And then, remember what happened in Charlottesville when those folks came out of the fields at night with torches and swastikas, and the white supremacist, and a young woman was killed. I spoke to her mom. Then President Trump said there were very fine people on both sides. And I give my word, that's when I decided I'm going to do this. But I was worried about doing it because I knew how bitter it would be. And so I got a phone call from my, true story, from my eldest granddaughter saying, can we have a family meeting? You probably are aware if it's around here. We have a tradition in the Biden family. Any child can ask for a family meeting. It doesn't often happen, but you take it seriously. So my grandchildren, my 4 granddaughters and grandson, Beau's children and Hunter's children, came down on a Saturday, and we sat and talked, and they said, they said, we know you're thinking of running, Pop, but you ought to do it. Daddy wants you to do it, talking about Beau and the rest. And I said, well, it's going to be pretty tough. And they said, you got to do it. And we decided to do it, and I did it for 3 reasons. One, to restore the soul of this country. That's not who we are. We're a decent, honorable country that cares. We really are. We still are. Second one is to, begin to take care of the middle class, because the middle class does well. The poor have a real shot, and the wealthy do very well. And thirdly, to unite the country. And at the time, people thought, well, maybe the first 2, but you never unite the country. But look what we did. We got a lot done. No one thought I could ever pass the infrastructure bill. No one thought I could ever do anything about making sure that we took care of people with disabilities and drug prices and whole range of them. No one thought we could do anything on the environment. No one thought we could do anything about same-sex marriage. I mean, we did not all of it, but a significant portion of it was done in a bipartisan way.
When I was a White House aide, I remember having meetings in this room on climate. They didn't always go so well. And I never would have imagined 12 years ago that something as sweeping on climate as the Inflation Reduction Act would have happened. So my question really, and I was watching all of this unfold, is who or what created the political space for you to take that kind of action?
Young people. That generation between 18 and 35 now. They're the ones that created the space. They had enough of it. And so what I did was, when I trying to figure out whether I could put something together, I met with them, we had rallies, they showed up in the 2020 election, they showed up in the 2022 election, and we passed the largest environmental plan in all of history, over $368 billion. We got it done. And what happened was, Mother Nature let her wrath be seen the last 2 years. For example, I have traveled on a helicopter over more forest area burned to the ground than the entire state of Maryland. That's how much is burned to the ground. Floods, droughts, all the things. And so people can't deny it anymore. They can't deny the fact. And I've traveled the world. I've gone to all the COP meetings around the world, meaning the meetings on climate. If we don't keep the temperature from going above 1.5 degrees Celsius raised, then we're in real trouble. That whole generation is damned. I mean, that's not hyperbole. Really, truly in trouble. And that's why the first meeting I had with the so-called, G7, the largest economies in the world, democracies in the world, the first thing we talked about was, they wanted to talk about was my initiative on energy, on dealing with moving toward, for example, I called all the automakers and truck makers and I asked them to come to the South Lawn the first year and to try to talk them into doing something more, going electric. And within 5 weeks, all of them agreed they were going to go electric, 50% by 2030, and by 2050, all electric.
Wow.
And I think we can do it.
You're also responsible for reviewing drilling and oil production.
Yes.
What would you say to those young people who want you to continue to be their champion, but might not think that you're going far enough or fast enough on climate?
Well, first of all, we're going faster than anyone's ever gone. We're going to need fossil fuels for at least the next 10 years. It's not like tomorrow we can turn it all off,
Okay.
number one. And so, in addition to that, things got really complicated when Putin put 185,000 forces into Ukraine, having a profound impact on their energy ability to be able to keep the heat on in the winter and keep things moving. And so we're going to need fossil fuel. But what we have to do is I've said no more drilling off our ocean. I mean, the whole range, but there has to be the ability to generate some energy. But we can get rid of coal much more rapidly. And by the way, for example, I was up in Massachusetts, one of the largest coal-producing electric facilities in the nation. Well, guess what? We hooked it up to wind technology. And so now, and it's cheaper. We can do solar, we can do wind cheaper than we can do fossil fuels. So it's a matter of transitioning, but it's not like you can cut everything off immediately.
You obviously understand the existential threat that young people feel when it comes to climate.
Sure.
How do you balance that with the immediate concerns of babysitting Congress or getting 51 or 60 votes on some of this?
Well, look, I've been I want to be careful here.
Sure, yeah.
I've been relatively successful
Right.
in working across the aisle. There is a MAGA Republican portion of the party. It makes up about a third of the Republican Party. I've had more than a half a dozen Republican senators I've known for years over the last 2 years come to me individually, and I promise I'd never mention their names, and I'll go to my grave, never mention them.
You can tell me later.
No, I'm not telling. Seriously, I've never broken my word. And saying, Joe, I agree with you, but if I do anything publicly, they're going to primary me, I'll lose. The Republican Party is going through a significant transition. And we're going to see in the next 2 years how they end up. Whether the MAGA Republicans control the party or we get back to conservative. Like, for example, a guy as tough as can be is the majority leader of the United States, the minority leader of the United States Senate, McConnell. But he's straight. He's a traditional conservative. He's straight. What he says he does, he probably doesn't even want me saying this. It probably hurt his reputation. But there's a lot of people in the Republican Party who are traditional conservative Republicans that you can deal with. But, the gentlewoman from the state of Georgia and the mountains up there and others, Gates and anyway.
That's very diplomatic. I would have used different language, but
there's an existential question that the Republican Party is going to have to face, and it's going to determine what happens in the next couple of years. But my focus is just stay focused on the things that matter. We've got to deal with the climate. We've got to deal with civil liberties and voting rights. We've got to deal with issues relating to economic growth. Look, in this period, I inherited, I think it's fair to say, a gigantic mess economically and politically.
Of course.
We've created 12 million new jobs since I've been president. More than any president's created in 4 years. We've generated so much growth. We've created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. With the bill that became a bipartisan bill, with no one thought could happen, the Chips and Science Bill, we used to invest 2% of our GDP in research and development. That's why we're the nation we were. Well, guess what? We decided to start, we ended up being number 8 or 10 instead of number 1. Well, now we're doing it again through the Chips and Science Bill. Guess what? Commitments for $300 billion in investments over the next 10 years to build these chips. We invented the chips. We made them, we made them much more sophisticated. We used to be, anyway. So there's so much going on that the country's hungry to move, I think, and I'm confident we can do it.
It's reassuring to hear you talk about the ways young people can continue to get involved and that you feel like there's still bipartisan hope there if it's, you know.
Oh, there is. By the way, I mean, look, again, if we had had this conversation immediately after Trump lost, although he's not sure he did, but, and I told you we were going to get more done in 2 years than almost any president has done, period, and much of it in a bipartisan way, I think everybody would have looked at me like, what's this guy been drinking? What's going on here? But we have. And we've been able to, the leadership of the Democratic Party has been able to hold a Democratic Congress together, and we picked up a few Republicans along the way. And I think it's beginning to bear fruit that it's hard to deny that it works.
Speaking of young people, the Supreme Court is considering striking down your student debt relief decision. What's the plan if that happens?
Well, first of all, the constitutional scholars I've spoken to say the people challenged it have no standing. I mean, the court is ultimately, as much as they want to rule, I think they're going to have to rule that it was appropriate for what I did, number one. Number two, if you think about it, we had this PPP program. That is the program during the pandemic. People lost their businesses because they had to shut down, restaurants closed, blah, blah, blah. And so we provided billions of dollars, significantly more than helping students with their debt. And a number of the very people who criticized me in Congress actually got benefits in the program. You don't hear them talking about it, right? The average student who will benefit from my student loan forgiveness program is somebody making less than 90% make $70,000 or less. They're just trying to get out of the hole. They're just trying to get started. They're just trying to get up and running. And so it is overwhelmingly in the interest of the economy. It's a fair thing to do, and it's going to generate economic growth that's significant. I understand them worrying. I don't know whether people realize, a lot of parents realize, how much of a burden this is. You get out of school, there were no jobs when you graduated initially because of the pandemic. You got a debt that is, in most cases, exceeding $10,000 loan you got, or grant you got. And it's really a gigantic burden. You want to grow the economy. You want these people being able to go out and make a down payment on a home, be able to go out and start a business, be able to go out and be free to the debt so they can invest in things that they care about. And it's just so short-sighted if they don't.
I wanted to ask you a slightly different question. So my partner Josh and I have been engaged for the last 5 years, which really only means that every auntie and uncle that I have is beyond disappointed that there hasn't been a wedding yet. But Cardi B is going to marry us, apparently officiate our wedding, which would be nice. But my question for you, Mr. President, is you codified support for same-sex marriage and interracial marriages like ours. I'm curious what your evolution was like on marriage equality and what the federal government might be able to do to protect LGBTQ Americans, especially trans kids who are dealing with all these regressive state laws that are popping up right now.
I can remember exactly where my epiphany was.
Okay.
I hadn't thought much about it, to tell you the truth, and I was a senior in high school, and I wanted to get a job turned out I was the only Caucasian lifeguard in the projects in the city of Wilmington, the big swimming pools. And my dad was dropping me off to go in and get an application at City Hall in Wilmington, Rodney Square it's called. I remember about to get out of the car, and I looked to my right, and two well-dressed men in suits kissed each other. I mean, they gave each other a kiss. And then one looked like he was heading to the DuPont building, and one looked like he headed to the Hercules Corporation building. And I'll never forget, I turned and looked at my dad. He said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other. It's simple. No, I'm not joking. It's simple. They love each other. And it's never been, it's never been, it's just that simple. And I remember, you may remember because you may have been here when in our last administration with Barack, I went on Meet the Press.
Oh, I know.
And they asked me about their show. I was telling them I had visited a family in another state, and I watched this gay couple raising two kids and watching them run in and throw their arms around daddy and so on. I said, they said, well, what do you think? Rush had asked me, I said, I think people should be able to get married. Married. It doesn't matter whether it's same-sex or a heterosexual couple. They should be able to be married. What is the problem? So listen to your auntie and your uncle. Get married. Do it now. Don't wait. Transgender kids is a really harder thing. What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful. I mean, it's just terrible what they're doing. It's not like, a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided I want to become a man, or I want to become a woman, or I want to change. I mean, what are they thinking about here? They're human beings. They love, they have feelings, they have inclinations that are, it just, to me, is, I don't know, it's cruel. And the way we do it is we make sure we pass legislation like we passed on same-sex marriage. You mess with that, you're breaking the law, and you're going to be held accountable.
Thank you, sir. I also can tell that, some auntie or my mom probably texted you beforehand if you're trying to pressure me too.
No, but get moving, man. I don't want to hear you can't do it.
I know we're on limited time, so I just want to ask you, looking ahead, there are a lot of names floated. It's a crowded field. Who should be the next permanent host of The Daily Show?
Depending how you edit this program, you.
Yes. Okay, that's a good answer. Solid answer. I don't think we need to edit anything then. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And again, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back.